So, identity crisis. Interesting topic, and I think there would be no better way to start it off by kind of getting a feel for what we think the definition is of an identity crisis. Maybe not the exact definition, because I do think it is subjective and it's different for everybody. So, one thing I wanted to lead with was asking you, when you hear the term identity crisis, what do you see? What does that mean to you?
I would say that, like you said, it's very individual, but there is an underlying issue and definition at play. So, the bare bones of an identity crisis, I think, is a moment of awareness that comes to you at a time in your life where I think you're shedding an old identity, something that doesn't fit, almost like when pants become too snug. um, it makes you aware of the fact that something isn't sitting right. So, in my opinion, the definition is kind of like coming to the conclusion that you now have the conscious awareness of figuring out who you are, and things that you have always thought are now called into question. And the reason is different for everybody. And I could be leaving out a chunk, so I'm going to have you bounce off of that. And if I left something out, what what resonated with you in that definition, or what did I not even mention?
So, what I think when I hear identity crisis, it's kind of where your interests and beliefs and worldviews get challenged by new experiences that you have in life. And those new experiences introduce you to new perspectives. And it's usually around your late teens or early 20s or sometimes even 30s. And like, things that you've been brought up to believe, values you were taught to have, worldviews that your parents have, that's a big one. Uh, Things your teachers teach you about the world, or even the interests that you had because the people you were surrounded by were into them. And then you get older and you find out you disagree with a lot of these things and you don't really know what to do with that, because your entire life you've been kind of molded by people, and now all of a sudden you are allowed, and you are the one that has to start taking control and figuring out which direction you want to go. And a lot of the times people will find out that they totally disagree with what they thought they wanted when they were kids.
Yeah.
So, for example, hopefully I can relate to people here. Like, when I was younger, I was taught to work hard, don't talk back to anybody, don't put your wants over other people's, and do not miss work for something that you want to do. And then I get into my late 20s, and those things turn, just subconsciously or naturally, turned into me not being able to stand up for myself, not being able to say no to people, bad at setting my own boundaries, and working so much that I forget to live and enjoy life. And then I start getting older, and I'm still living with these default settings that I've had my entire life. And then I get exposed to new things, and my old perspectives start to change. And I'm, kind of like, wait a minute, that's not how it actually works. I've been told for 20 years that this is how the world works, and this is, stuff like that. So to me, it's kind of just your old perspectives that you were taught when you were younger, kind of getting challenged by your own new experiences.
Mm. Yeah, while you were saying that, it made me think of, I like the default settings. I think that was a very interesting way of putting it. I thought in my moment when you were talking about how just things change, uh, and gaining that new sense of control makes me think of like autopilot being shut off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, like you mentioned, your environment, your parents, teachers, peers, everyone around you, they have this very important part in helping you develop a sense of who you are, but there's a lack of permanence in that. And I think that's important. Sometimes people will start to find out that who they thought they were isn't who they want to be, and they think it's abnormal, but it's not. 16-year-old me definitely is not 25-year-old me, and it shouldn't be that way. So it's normal to go through these phases of identities. And I think understanding who you are as a core individual is what our big identity crisis is. It's the first one. And um, now that you have the control of the airplane, you can decide where you want it to go. And it's really a scary thought because now you can't rely on other people telling you who you are. You need to figure out who you are yourself. I don't know if that resonates with more than just me. I'm not usually an airplane person, but for some reason, autopilot is
Right.
how I thought of that. Just your environment just molds you into
Yeah,
this.
I think that makes sense because when you're a kid, you kind of are on autopilot. Your parents or your adults in your life
Right.
are running the show. Even when you go over to a friend's house and maybe it's not even your parents, it's still them making decisions. They determine when you have to be a certain place, and it's just different responsibilities. And even when you're in those situations, you're getting all kinds of different perspectives from every adult in your life. Like we said, teachers, your parents, those are the main ones. And it just seems like input is coming from all directions. And it just molds you into these world beliefs that you then take because you have no evidence to back it up. You haven't been in the world that they have. And because they're older, because they're adults, I think we tie them being older to having more experience or wisdom. So we believe it. And a lot of times we grow up and it's we find out it's wrong. And I think that definitely hurts our self-confidence because it's a big thing to deal with when you come across a point in your life where you're realizing everything you thought you knew is wrong. And then everything that you learn, you then kind of have that self-doubt. You're like, well, is that even right now? Because I thought I was right before.
Mm,
And that I think is a huge issue that ties into identity crisis. It lowers self-confidence as well. And with somebody at that young who is as influenceable as ever, children and like adolescent kids are so easily influenced by adults or even other kids at that age. So it's like riding on a train and getting ready to jump off that train. When the train's going, say, 50 miles an hour, you try to jump off of it and land in the same spot without moving.
mm.
But you end up just hitting the ground and falling on your face because of the momentum. And I feel like that is what trying to get out of an identity crisis is like.
Mm. Yeah, I think the uncertainty, I like when you were talking about that, like it does it does turn into this sense of you don't know who you are. And I think there it can become pathologic, meaning like it can fester and turn into a much bigger thing than it is. It does for most people. And I feel like part of that is just something that you have to go through. It's almost like a rite of passage to figuring out who you are is going through hard times, and what comes out of that hole is meant to, like, you're in this hole, it feels like you're all alone, you're down, you've dug yourself so deep, but the person who digs you out, like the version of yourself that gets you out of the hole is the one that can keep you going. And I think it's as hard as it is, um it's something that we all have to go through, I think, in order to gain a better version of ourselves is to push our old self and see what comes out of it.
Yeah, that's one thing I was thinking about before this. I think a lot of it is leaning into the new perspectives and the new ideas that you're discovering, the new interests you're now having that you never saw coming. You definitely want to get out and see new things, and that is where you're going to find the things that turn you into the person you want to be. And I think it is one of the most important things to do in a situation like that. But real quick, I wanted to ask, what is your experience with identity crisis?
That's a good question. I think there's a point where you hit miniature identity crises as you grow. And none of those really resonate. You never think of them as an identity crisis till you go through your big one. So there were many times growing up where I was kind of like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? And one of those moments would be like when you transition from an athlete to someone who's no longer playing sports. That's a miniature one, but it's when you are growing up and you're playing all these sports and that's all your high school, I mean, grade school, high school, everything revolved around sports for me personally.
Right.
And then I realized my senior year, I don't want, I don't want sports to be all I'm known for because quite frankly, I would
Right.
get approached by people that I'd never met before and they're like, "Oh, you're so and so from that basketball team." And we loved watching you play, is incredible, all these things. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, like I'm a basketball player. That was an identity of mine. And then senior year hit and I played my last game and it's like after that clock ran out, I'm not a basketball player anymore because I knew I wasn't going on. I didn't want to go on to play college.
Yeah.
Um, I had considered it. I had some offers and it didn't resonate with me. Thankfully, I was someone who could shed that willingly, not be someone who wanted to go play ball and not have any options, or have to
Right.
try being a walk on instead of getting some offers. But before I accepted any of those, I decided, like, you know what? This isn't who I identify as anymore. I don't want to just be the athlete. I love science. I love learning. I love academics. And so I then became the student. And I am
It's
still
like pretty.
the
That's literally
student.
polar opposites.
Yes. It's funny. I went from jock to nerd. I'd always been the nerd. I've
Right.
always done well in school and loved school more than anything. But yeah, shedding that athletic version of myself was a miniature one. And then the big ones I would say would be when wanted to do nursing school and it just didn't feel right. And it just didn't sit well with me. I love what nurses do. I respect them, but I personally could not be one. Um, and this was my big moment. Was when I broke down to my mom and I had everything lined up for nursing school. I had a full ride. I had my dorm room. I had my textbooks lined up. I was going to pick them up. I had financial aid go all the way through, like all of it. I was 2 weeks from starting. I had already taken pharmacology over the summer and it just didn't feel right. It felt like there was a door that I couldn't open, even though all these other things lined up. So I broke down to my mom and sh she basically was like, "Well, if you know it's not this, just finish your bachelor's and don't have it be a bachelor's in nursing." But I knew it was medical, so I went pre-med. And then when I finished that, I broke I broke down again because I'm shedding these identities in a way, but they were facades. Now looking back, like I never identified as a nurse. Like I never really fitted in. It was almost like I was trying on an extra small when I needed a small. Like it didn't fit. Um so I never kept the extra small on and then had to work my way out of it. So these were minute. I am I am more worried about what comes when I'm done with med school because I broke down. I found the med school of my dreams and everything worked out well. But what happens when I'm no longer the student? I think that's going to be
Mm,
my big identity crisis, my biggest one,
right.
because I've always been able to quickly adapt. And I never really went through what you went through because I was there for your identity crisis. And I could be wrong, but I don't feel like I ever went through that same phase. I mean, do you think I did?
Yeah, I don't think so. Um, I just reflecting on the this. I like the idea of like miniature ones and bigger ones because that's something I didn't really think about, but that totally makes sense because, like I said, it's different for everybody, and everybody goes to them to a certain degree. Um, and usually it is graduating high school and kind of wondering, oh, what now? Or later graduating college. And some people, like yourself, go to med school and have no idea really anything outside of school. Like you've been in school for, what is it, like 20, it's like 21 years at this point or something like that.
Yeah.
That that is an unbelievable number to be in school and in a way guided on your path to a degree, and then come to the end of that when you graduate. It's like, what does work life look like? That's the goal, and you have no idea what it looks like until you get there. So that's a big thing that I think a lot of people can relate to is, what do I do if I get through school and find out that I don't like, and that can be where the big ones come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my version of my experience with identity crisis was a pretty drastic one because when I graduated, there was no college in the equation for me. I don't think there ever really was. It just didn't line up for me. I had zero interest. So it was just instantly get into working. But I had been working even throughout high school, so that was just even easier of a decision. So when I was young, work was always the number one answer. It was always the default. So going through years of manual labor and with a family who has nothing but a background in manual labor for generations, the idea of doing anything but manual labor was it didn't even cross my mind. And long story short, after working for farmers and contractors and carpenters and being a crane technician and then in sheet metal with my dad, 2 years working with my dad, finally finding out that it's not what I wanted to do. It was such a huge realization and such a altering concept that I wanted to quit what I was doing. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no plan. And with you being out here in Arizona at the time, you had been out here for a year. And I had it in my mind that I was not moving to Arizona because my whole life I had in my head, I don't like traveling because my parents didn't like traveling. I don't want to go anywhere else. I don't need to go anywhere else. Everything I have or everything I need is right here. There's nothing for me out there. And that was kind of the mentality. And it took one trip coming out here, and I wasn't even looking for things to pick up on, but it wasn't until I traveled for the first time, coming damn near across the country, it it was just interesting the differences that I was seeing and picking up on without really even looking. And that's what started it all. It was that first thing that challenged my perspective that I grew up with. And I think the biggest thing was not fighting it and kind of like, oh, what's this about? Like, oh, maybe I'll open this door a little more and do a little research or open my eyes a little bit more, open my mind a little more to what this could hold. And from then on, it has been nothing but personal growth and hard decisions. And even more, I feel like the identity crisis has to get worse before it gets better. But it only does either one. If you lean into it, there's just no real way around it. And I still can't believe to this day how I would have ended up. I can't picture what it would have been like if I didn't start doing things. So that's what I would recommend for somebody is you have to start looking for different perspectives or looking for different worldviews, because yours may not be right and you have to be okay with that. So another thing, if you don't have anything else to add there.
I don't want to sidetrack you too much.
No, that's fine.
Okay, mine is while it's fresh and while you're talking about your personal experience, because with mine, I have yet to have what I call like my pending doom identity crisis. Um, you did, and from the people that I know who have also had these identity crises, yours resonates and fits that picture. So maybe giving some example without making this the your identity crisis video,
Right.
but not going too much into it, but just so that way it can feel relatable to viewers. Like the things that I saw from an outside perspective and then the things that you personally went through and the way what I saw as loneliness, how it felt for you. So while you were going through and working still in the environment that you weren't growing in, is what I called it,
Right.
you isolated. So things to look for, or maybe if you don't know you're having an identity crisis, maybe these words will make you kind of
Yeah.
be like, oh, I'm going through something similar. And they might pique your interest a little bit. Like you were so isolated. Your whole family was downstairs, you were upstairs doing your own thing. You were grouchy. And
Very.
I was in Arizona and I could feel the grouchiness. I just knew there was like a dark cloud over your head. And then you just you seemed to ruminate and say the same things over and over with no action paired with them.
Yes.
And I'll let you speak to that more. So I don't sound like I'm like I had lectured you, but in a
Yeah, yeah.
way I tried to hold that mirror up, but if I hold a mirror up, you won't see anything if your eyes are closed.
Right.
So it was kind of like we had to get you to that point to open your eyes. So I would like for you to like relate to the viewers a little bit more on this instead of us just talking about this ambiguous thing called an identity crisis. Let's make it something more tactile and what our viewers would be able to wrap their heads around.
Just the way I feel like the reason I wanted to isolate myself was just uncertainty, and I had uncertainty of where I wanted to go, but I had a certainty that it wasn't here. So it was one of those things where as soon as you see something, you can't unsee it, and that was happening with my family's worldviews. So as soon as I saw that I didn't agree with it, I didn't want the same life that they had, and nothing against them or whatever, as soon as I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So there was a degree of resentment, and it wasn't their fault because they're just trying to be parents and trying to help me on my way. I think it was it got to the point where I was under the impression that they wanted to determine my way
Mm.
and they wanted to have influence over where I end up, who I become, what job I have. And it can be really easy to get trapped in that. But if I could go back, I don't think isolating myself was the right choice. I understand why that's the conclusion I came to at the time, because hindsight's always 2020. I didn't have the answers at the time. It just felt like I had nobody to relate to, and anybody that I did have to talk to or vent to, I didn't want to, because I didn't want to burden anybody. I don't want to dump all this stuff on to everybody who may want to listen, or they may listen, but it's like after a couple times of doing it, it's like, okay, dude, you're repeating yourself. Let's what are you going to do about it?
Mm.
And that's where I was not focusing on. It was a lack of action, because I wanted to make that first step perfect. And I would just overthink and go nowhere with it. And there's a quote that I really want to find, but I'll butcher it, so I'm not gonna. But it had something to do with thought without action is stagnation, but action without thought is madness, or something like that, is chaos, or something like that. And that's the weird cycle that I was in, but I was also super aware that I was doing nothing and sitting here talking about wanting to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this circle that I was going in where I'm overthinking. I'm aware that I'm overthinking. I want to stop overthinking, but I don't know what to do instead. And I'm trying to think my way out of overthinking. And it just kept spinning and spinning and spinning. I was trying to avoid discomfort. I was trying to avoid doing the things that I was not okay with doing, not comfortable with doing, not confident in. And I didn't have the confidence to do certain things. So it was kind of keeping me in this box and keeping me from starting my action phase of my identity crisis. I was in the thinking, planning phase for way too long. And that's another thing that kind of leads me into this question. What do you wish someone would have warned you about before your identity crisis, or even during your identity crisis? Like, yeah, go ahead.
I think that's interesting, especially from I I think this podcast alone and talking about it is going to help me for my big one. So the things that this podcast is going to cover, I think will kind of help me put on some armor and know how to handle the what happens when I'm no longer a student and I have to go right into being a doctor. Um, I think that some things that we should know, and I think these could just be life in general. They will definitely apply to when you have an identity crisis. They may resonate if after you've already had one. But even if you're not someone who's going through an identity crisis, and this is just an interesting topic, if I can give you one thing, um, it is stop putting so much pressure on that first step being successful.
Mm-hmm.
Switch the goal of it to be like from being successful to being a learning opportunity. Because when you stop trying to be right, you are finally allowing yourself to learn. Because if every step is a lesson, you are building a more successful version of yourself. The first step may not be right,
Right.
but the fact that you took a step and learned something is right. You're not going to learn anything if you stay in a circle touching the same stepping stones over and over. And that was something that I tried to tell you in the moment. And if you had known prior, or if maybe it wasn't your girlfriend telling you and it was someone on a podcast, maybe it would hit better.
Yeah.
But when you would just paralyze yourself with analyzing what to do next, the first thing you choose to do. What if I choose the wrong first step? You didn't move at all for months. And it was really hard to watch as someone, especially someone who was 3,000 miles away, someone who is used to being right next to you, helping you through things, not doing it for you, but being a partner in that. And I was so busy with schooling that there wasn't much I could do except just there was no way to say it but to be blunt because I didn't have the time to dance around the subject. I'm like, you would start talking and venting, and it ended up becoming a rumination tactic. You would just say the same things over and over. And when when you do that, I finally got to the point where I'm pointing out, like, you have said these things multiple times. What have you done between the last time you said it and the time you just said it to change it? And your answer really was nothing. But at the time, you were justifying bad habits, the bad habits that you were developing, which was just focusing so much on things you could not control. You got into the you got into um an interesting thing where instead of trying to find yourself or build yourself, you were trying to put bricks on other people's identities, and they didn't resonate with them. Your parents, like, I wish my parents would just understand blank. I wish they would just see something this way. And um that was a bad habit to get into because you can't change other people's identities. Stop trying to do that. Focus on yourself. So, another thing that I think would be valuable is even if you don't know what the next step is, even if you don't have a job, for example, that you know you want to do, looking inward to yourself and assessing who you want to be, not what you want to be, and then take this time to invest in yourself. Identify as someone who eats healthy, someone who sleeps well, someone who is chasing a better version of themselves. When you find that passion and you put that invested time to yourself, that is never a waste because then you're building a better version of yourself and passion will follow. You will find things you're passionate about through working, like working out, for example, going to the gym. Let's say you're someone who doesn't really feel the motivation to do it, give it a try. You are going to surround yourself with like minded people in a gym. You will have some people that don't resonate with you in a gym. That is fact. But many times when you start doing self improvement activities, you're going to find self improvement individuals. And just that opens your eyes a tiny bit more than if you were at home sulking, not doing anything. Um, Same thing with eating better. Eating better equals feeling better equals a clearer mind. And then through that clearer mind, you're like, oh, hey, you know what? I really like insert passion here, whatever it is. I'm really curious about art or other countries, and you want to travel, seeing the rest of the country. I'm really interested in any of those things. Chase them.
Yeah,
Go
absolutely.
see, go learn.
Absolutely.
That's something I wish that you would have known prior to going through your crisis because, like, I think one of the better things that will benefit me moving forward and when I go into mine is understanding that you don't have to know exactly who you are every second of the day. Just knowing that you're interested in finding or building yourself will be like enough. I trust myself enough to know. I have the confidence in myself to know that uncertainty is okay. It just means I'm growing.
Yeah, I liked that part where you talked about wasting time because that just reminded me of something that was seriously getting in the way for no reason. And it was the fact that I knew I was wasting time. I was hyper aware of the amount of time I was not taking action. And that only continued me not taking action because I was so worried and getting in my own head about I'm wasting time. I'm not moving towards what I want. I don't know what I want. I want to figure it out. I don't know what the steps I need to take. What is it? What do I need? I'm asking the wrong questions. And another thing I wanted to touch on that you said was going to the gym. That was something that I convinced myself and helped a ton that was helping me get there. That was the closest thing that I was trying to do that was in my mind, taking action at the time. And even if it wasn't towards what I wanted to do, maybe it was towards the person I wanted to be. I want to be somebody who is physically fit and has the self-confidence to go to a gym. And because that's not something I always had when I was younger. So that was something that I wanted to do. And also just somebody who goes to the gym often. It builds self-confidence. Like, it builds identity. It builds characteristics like, discipline. You get to a point where you're like, yeah, I say I'm going to go to the gym. I want to go to the gym. I go to the gym often, and it's just building discipline. And I think that is extremely important. You build discipline, you build self-confidence, which builds character and builds identity. And it is so helpful. But I had that mixed with kind of the only sort of action that I was taking, and I was calling that the action at the time, as well as making like inspirational videos on TikTok and stuff like that. That was the biggest one where I was trying to find people to connect with, and I was just distracting myself with something that I was calling productive, but it in reality was just a distraction from the real hard decisions that I needed to make to get out of the situation I was in. So that was something that I think was good to bring up. And back to, I'll touch on what I wish somebody would have told me before my identity crisis. And actually, real quick, my dad did warn me that I would. It was just very vague, and it wasn't, it didn't have the title of, you're going to have an identity crisis. Here's what that is. Here's how whatever. It was just what he told me, and his exact words were, there's going to be a time very soon, because I was 15 at the time, where your mind is going to be so scrambled and you're going to have no idea what's going on. And that was basically it. I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, oh, thanks. I don't know what to do with that. When is that? And so now I've played that back. Not that I was anxious about it or, is this it? Is it? I wasn't worried like that. Now looking back, when he told me that, there was a reason he told me that. And it was because we were having an argument about having more freedom with going out with friends, or a later curfew, or something like that, something stupid. And at the time, I thought that was the identity. I thought that's what he meant. And then later, I found out that it was far from it. And so what I wish somebody would have told me during, and here's the thing, maybe somebody did, and it just didn't click for whatever reason. And that's another thing that is interesting. I would look online. I would watch podcasts. I would watch nothing but self-improvement videos and stuff like that. I would watch other people chasing their dream, I would watch other people on their journey, and it felt good to see other people doing it, and it felt good to be watching something like that instead of other mindless videos. So that was another thing I was distracting myself with and calling productive. And coming to realize that the real answer was just starting and taking that first step, stop overthinking. But something I wish somebody would have told me during my identity crisis was just that it's normal to chase the things that you're interested in. It's okay that you're coming to different conclusions. everybody does it, and that was something that was keeping me held down in my mind. I thought I was the only one. I thought that nobody else, especially people around me, I thought I was the only one going through this, which is why I didn't want to talk to people about it because they wouldn't understand. And that's why I would reach out on, make videos on TikTok because I'm like, maybe there's somebody out there. I need to get a wider audience to try to find somebody to relate to because I'm just not getting it here.
Mm.
So I really wish, like, if I could go back and tell younger me that you'll get there. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but that is totally necessary to get to the place where you want to be the person you want to be. And it's really the only way to do it. You just have to buckle up and deal with whatever this situation throws at you and just know that it is going to shape you into who you can see yourself in your mind. So if you don't have anything to add to that, I think I have a good closing thing that I
I
really want to touch
I
on.
I don't have much to add. I think you did a great job explaining that, capturing how it was for you, the outsider's point of view, watching you go through it. It all lines up. Um, and I like that you said maybe somebody said it and you just didn't hear it. It's hard to know for sure if those exact words were said or what
Mm,
variation, because maybe the way they were said didn't speak to you. Um, and then the final thing that made me think of that is looking back, and I hadn't processed this until you were just talking now, is I always took it so personally why you kept saying you like nobody gets it, nobody gets it.
mm,
And I think it's literally because I had never role modeled going through it myself. Like, I'm a year older, so therefore I should have hit what you hit by then, and I didn't. So I just thought it was interesting that, like, no wonder you didn't think I would totally get it because I didn't go through it. My whole life has been planned honestly too well, because of my personality. So I hadn't had that yet, but now I have someone who is experienced and seasoned. This is probably the only time I'll refer to you as seasoned, um, for me on life, uh, in terms of experience because of that, and I will be leaning on you for it. So I'm excited for your closing question.
So I wanted to be sure to ask questions that actually have the opportunity to give the viewer answers.
Yes.
And one thing I really wanted to ask was how do we get past it? How do we get past an identity crisis and get through the struggle of what that brings?
Mm, that's a really good question. Um, I think the most important way to get through and get past, well, to get past is to get through.
I was really hoping you would say that because I was trying so hard not to interrupt you and say
I kind of
that.
felt that. I was like, "Ooh, wait, if I rephrase that, I can feel him fidgeting right now."
Yeah.
I was tuned into your wavelength on that. Yes, that is a quote for sure. The only way to get past is to get through. Um, because if you avoid it, you never grow. It is something that I think is a pivotal moment in who you are to become. Um, I think it also is just as scary of a thought is if you had stayed paralyzed, like you had mentioned previously, where would you be now? And my answer is quite frankly, you would be worse off, but essentially in the same scenario, but just a year and a half longer festering abscess of a person,
Yes.
because unfortunately that's what it does is when you need to grow or when you need to shed something and you're not doing that, it, like I mentioned, can become pathological. It is wrong. It is a sickness in a way. You are not developing onto the next phase. And when things like that happen, there is there is more harm in staying in the same spot.
Hmm.
And my advice to viewers as well is, while it does seem scary to move forward, it's even scarier to not move at all. And while familiarity is comforting, I think that's part of why it's so scary to take a step that you don't know where your foot's gonna land, because you're familiar with the stepping stone you're on. You've come to make this little house on it, like, I'm here, I'm comfortable, my comfort blanket's here, whatever. Like, you don't want to leave and see what the next thing is, but that next step could have literally your dreams, or maybe it's 15 steps down the road. The point being is, it's not where you're at now. And I think a lot of people can fall into not having the courage to move forward
Hmm.
into growing into it.
Yeah, there's a quote that I don't want to lose.
Mm,
It's, the person you want to be is on the other side of your discomfort. It's pretty simple.
that makes sense. I like that a lot.
So what you were saying about going through rather
Yes.
than getting past it, it's on the other side of your discomfort. You have to do the things you're uncomfortable with, but anyways.
I like that. No, I think that kind of captures exactly what we're talking about. Um, that the only way to get past it is to get through it. And through it means you have to go through the discomfort. And that was something that you struggled with a lot, because, well, anybody would struggle with discomfort. I don't mean that like, I'm saying
Yeah.
from personal experience with you, it was uncomfortable to question your parents because it was something that was drilled into your
It was
head,
something that was punished my entire life.
Right. And
Just, anytime I would stand up for myself, I would get punished, or talk back was not allowed.
yeah.
Even if you were totally justified in your argument, it
Mhm.
didn't matter.
Yeah. I think the other thing with that is growing pains. There's a reason they're painful. I think these are psychological growing pains, like bones stretching, like when your psyche's stretching, it hurts. You got to go through some pretty tough things, but like we've said, the person you want to be is on the other side of it. So sometimes when you're going through it, just keeping in mind taking it, and the effort that you put in is the effort that will come out. I do believe that. And there are some people who kind of get stuck in an identity crisis and they spiral downwards instead of upwards. Well, if you're putting downward energy into something, you're going to go down. But if you try to make the best of it, you try to learn something, you try to grow, you will grow. They're like, plants can grow without the essential things sometimes, because they just, I had an aloe plant grow in the trash after I had thrown it away. No dirt, no water, no sunlight. So it wanted to live. I have replanted it and it is still in our apartment today. Like,
I didn't even know
yeah,
that.
I have a lot of aloe plants. But yeah, the fact that it's the one that's literally over
Hmm.
there, the one that is thriving. It is doing
Interesting.
so well. It is that aloe plant. It was a little pale in color because of the lack of sunlight. You could tell that but now it's green. It's got multiple. Oh, it's beautiful. So I think that aloe, sometimes if I ever get a little down, I just think about how resilient my aloe plants are. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do
Inspired by
this.
aloe.
I am inspired and not sponsored by aloe.
So, what I think is super important about getting past, or I'm just going to say getting through from now on, an identity crisis is realizing that it's not an exploration, it's a project.
Mm.
It's not something you have to go and, it's not like, oh, my identity's, I don't know what my identity is. I got to go and find it. Because that is kind of insinuating that there is a right answer that you need to find. And if you don't find that one, then your life's going to suck or whatever. It is a project. It is something you have to work on and you have to build, you have to cater to every day. And there are certain things that you need to find while you're building it. You need to find new perspectives, like I've been saying the whole time, new ideas, new worldviews. Go see new things. You need to look for opportunity to build your identity that you want. That's what's interesting is You can build whatever identity you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
Picture it in your mind. Find out, like, okay, what do I think that person would do? What do I think that person would say? Do I think that person would be a reactive person? Would they be calm and collected? Stuff like that. Would they go to the gym? And answer those questions, and there is your roadmap. There is the things that you need to do. The answers are a lot easier to find than I think you. It's not the answers that are going to get you there. It's using the information and applying it to reality.
Mm-hmm. I like that you're referring to your future identity as a separate individual. Like, I don't know if you caught it, but you're like, what would they do? What are they
Right.
calm and
Well, because it
collected?
is, because
Right.
you're not that person yet.
Yes, I think that's interesting. And at first I was like, who is he talking about? And I'm like, oh, duh. He's talking about the
Who I
person you're
want to
trying to
be.
be. Yes. I liked that a lot because it does represent what we have to go through to become that next person. And I love that you said finding opportunity, experience, and things. I think of those as building blocks. Like those are building materials. You can build whatever you want. It depends on your materials. So if you're collecting um, media that is just breaking you down, keeping you in the dumps, you're gonna be trying to build an I don't even know, some sort of big structure with straw and mud and these things that you don't need. Whereas if you are watching podcasts that are trying to teach you growth and you're going to the gym and you are traveling, now you're getting steel and concrete. I don't know. I'm not a builder, but you're getting things that are more set and they're going to give you a much better architectural finish product versus straw and mud and if even that. Anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off. I
No,
just
you're
thought that
good.
was a great.
And the last thing that I had was obviously not to fight it. I've kind of been talking about that. And not only that, but when you kind of going back to what I was saying a minute ago, it's not an exploration. I feel like if you're searching for something, if you're trying to find what you think your identity is, it turns it into more of a title. It's kind of it discredits because you're looking for it. It's like you're looking for an item. It's like you're looking for a product or a something when you're not. It's not something that you're gonna just stumble upon. And I think there's no other way to put it. I think we've pretty much covered as much as I can come up with anyway.
Yeah, I've my notes were small because I figured we would be able to just rattle this off the dome. Um, because it is personal experience and just trying to make sure that people feel related to. And that's something also that an identity crisis, finding connectivity with individuals, just knowing there are people that have gone through it and embracing it, giving yourself the grace. Self compassion is a big thing. I wish that you would have given yourself, being forgiving to yourself and more, like I said, grace is the best word.
It's
Just,
something you got to learn.
yes. And curiosity, keeping it there. And the word that might be a trigger word, patience. Patience, not at the expense of prolonging your suffering. Patience in the fact that growth takes time, but as long as you're putting in the effort and patience still will give you a product.
So, identity, it's not found, it's made. And that's really all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.